This happened a few months ago. I'm 32 now, and I like to escape the noise of the city. I'm a freelance photographer, always seeking calm and beauty in nature. So, I picked a spot in Cedarwood Forest. It seemed perfect. Just me, my tent, and the trees that I set up camp beside a stream. Tall pines surrounded me, blocking the city noise. The first night felt peaceful. I took pictures of the stars. I thought I had it all figured out. Around midnight, I heard leaves rustling outside my tent. I figured it was a raccoon or a deer. I ignored it at first, but then I heard laughter. It was faint at first, but it sounded like kids laughing. I wasn't sure. The woods shouldn't have laughter. I held my breath and tried to listen. It just kept happening. I told myself to relax. It was probably nothing. The second night was stranger. I stepped outside after dark and saw a line of stones arranged near my tent. They made a path leading into the woods. They looked too perfect for nature. My heart raced. I thought of turning back. Curiosity beat fear, though. I followed the stones deeper into the forest. Eventually, I found an old cabin. It looked abandoned, with vines crawling over it. I hesitated at the door. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced inside. It was dark, but I saw furniture, rotten and falling apart. I felt something watching me, like shadowy figures were there, just outside my vision. I wanted to run. Instead, I turned and left. On my third night, I heard the laughter again, much louder. I stepped outside, feeling a cold breeze. The laughter mixed with whispering all around me. It felt alive. My heart pounded as I stood frozen. I couldn't decide whether to run or move toward the sound. The whispers were sweet but terrifying. I thought I saw something dark between the trees. I whirled around, but there was nothing. Just darkness. The laughter faded, but something felt wrong. I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I took a deep breath and turned to head back to my tent. Then I heard one last laugh, almost right behind me. It felt too close. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled onto something in those woods, something that had noticed me. I hurried back to my tent. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about that cabin and the laughter. What were those voices? They were nowhere near normal. When morning finally came, I packed up quickly and drove away. I still wonder what I saw. What was out there? Why did it want me there? A few weeks passed since I left Cedarwood Forest. I tried to push it all behind me, but the memories haunted me. I found myself waking at night, heart racing as I recalled those eerie sounds. I couldn't shake the feeling that I still wasn't alone, even back in my apartment. One evening, I attended a local photography exhibition. While I flipped through the photographs, I overheard a couple talking. They mentioned Cedarwood Forest. My ears perked up. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. Did you hear about the disappearances? The woman said in a hushed tone. They say it's cursed. I took a step closer. My curiosity grew. I wanted to know more. What do you mean? The man asked, looking intrigued. Just last summer, a group of hikers went missing. They say they heard the laughter, just like you described, she replied. The entire room faded away as they spoke. I felt the weight of her words. I had thought I was just being silly, assuming I was imagining things. But I wasn't alone in this experience. There was a history I hadn't known. People think the woods are alive in a way, she continued. Like they're protecting something. My chest tightened. I couldn't help but feel that the cabin was part of whatever was lurking out there. I decided to confront my fears. If I could find answers, maybe I could finally let it go. The next weekend, I drove back to Cedarwood. It felt different, uneasy. The air was heavy. I parked near the entrance and suited up once more with my camera gear. I recorded as much as I could, the trees, the stream, every tiny detail felt significant now. As I walked deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The silence was almost too loud. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows. I knew I had to hurry if I wanted to explore the cabin again before it got dark. When I reached the cabin, it looked even more decayed than before. The door hung slightly open, creaking ever so slightly in the wind. I peered through the gaps in the wood, nerves bubbling in my stomach. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement caught my eye inside. Something darted across the room. I couldn't tell what. My heart pounded, and I felt that same chill from my last visit. I took a deep breath, pushing through the door. As I stepped inside, I noticed a strange symbol carved into the floorboards. It looked almost like a child's drawing, but twisted. My instinct screamed at me to turn back. I looked around, trying to spot anything else that seemed out of place. That's when I heard something behind me, a soft giggle. I whirled around, chest tightening in fear. The room felt colder. I knew I wasn't alone, but when I looked, there was nothing there. Just the empty cabin, silent and waiting. My gut told me to leave. I stumbled backward, bumping into a chair that tipped over with a loud crash. The laugh echoed again, louder this time, swirling around me like a wind. I rushed out of the cabin, heart racing. Once outside, I paused, eyes wide. It was then that I realized I wasn't just hearing laughter. It was calling me. I tried to make sense of it all, but the woods were alive. I felt a force pulling me deeper, wrapping its fingers around my mind. I faced the path of stones again. There was no turning back now. What waited in those woods? I could feel its eyes on me. And I knew I had to find out. As I stood at the edge of the cabin, the sun began to slip behind the trees, casting dark shadows that stretched like fingers towards me. The laughter echoed faintly in the distance, and there was a sense of urgency in the air. I had come too far to turn back now. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. That I clutched my camera tightly, navigating the crumbling porch and stepping over the threshold again. This time, I felt a strange compulsion to explore further. My heart was racing, but each breath felt sharper, more attuned to the sounds around me. I scanned the cabin again, searching for anything I might be missed. The symbol on the floor remained unsettling, but something else caught my eye, a small, loose floorboard. It looked new compared to the rest of the cabin, like it had been placed recently. In a rush of bravado, I knelt down and pried it open. Inside, there was a dusty old box, its hinges rusted and reluctant. I hesitated but knew I had to see what was inside. With a deep breath, I opened it slowly. Inside were assorted trinkets, rocks, feathers, and small animal bones, each one resonating with an untold story. But what really caught my attention was an old, tattered map, edges frayed and discolored. I opened it carefully. It depicted the Cedarwood Forest, but there were markings, strange dots and lines, winding paths that led to spots labeled with names I didn't recognize. My stomach lurched. Just below the cabin's location, I found a symbol that looked eerily similar to the carving on the floor, a pattern of circles interconnected with jagged lines. Suddenly, I heard the giggle again, closer this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. I froze, tension coursing through me. The atmosphere shifted, and I felt the urge to hide. I quickly slipped behind a broken table, clutching the map, heart pounding loudly in my ears. That I could hear whispers now, soft and unintelligible but filled with life. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, darting between the trees outside the cabin. The air became thick, charged with something electric. I forced myself to focus on the map in my hands, tracing the markings with my fingers. One particular spot was circled with a heavy, deliberate line. My breath caught. It was marked as a gathering point. At that moment, a shadow passed the cabin window. Panic surged in me as I crouched lower. What was out there? What did it want? I peeked over the edge of the table and saw a figure, a childlike shape, crouched low in the grass. It was facing away, but there was something wrong. The laughter, it was so familiar, yet echoed with a sinister undertone. Before I could think, the figure turned, and I saw its face. Hollow eyes stared back at me, devoid of life, but it wore a wide grin that stretched unnaturally across its face. I gasped, clutching the map tightly as it pointed a long, bony finger directly at me. Everything inside screamed at me to run. I bolted towards the door, the map tumbling from my grip. Just as I dashed outside, the laughter erupted into a chorus, rising up around me, closing in. The trees began to shift, the wind howled, and I felt the whispering voices surround me. I was lost. What had I stumbled into? Something was waiting for me deeper in those woods, and I had unknowingly drawn its attention. I took off down the path, heart racing as the laughter followed, echoing off the trees, relentless and haunting. And somewhere in the distance, I sensed something more. I had to find out what it was, but with every step, I could feel my own fear becoming part of the woods, part of the night that was ready to claim me. I ran, branches clawing at my arms, the laughter intensifying with each step. It wrapped around me, a warm shroud that felt both inviting and terrifying. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pushed past bushes and tree trunks, desperate to escape the echoes of the cabin that now felt like a trap. Ahead, I saw a break in the trees. Sunlight peeked through, casting a golden halo over a clearing. I headed toward it, praying for safety, but when I broke free from the thicket, I stopped short. There were 3 figures gathered in the clearing. They stood in a loose circle, their backs to me. Clad in tattered clothing that blended seamlessly with the forest, they seemed to sway slightly, as if caught in some rhythm I couldn't hear. The laughter escalated, filling my ears until the sound was all I could focus on. That I took a cautious step forward. The sun dipped behind a cloud, casting the clearing into shadow. Everything about this scene felt wrong. As I moved closer, the figures turned simultaneously, their faces obscured by dark hoods. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I took another step backward, only to stumble over a gnarled root. The figures moved closer, their heads tilting in unison as if they were sizing me up. In that moment, I glanced back at the path I had just raced down. It seemed to disappear into a thick fog, swallowing any chance of escape. A sense of panic washed over me. The laughter still echoed, drawing nearer, mingling with the whispered sounds of the figures. Then one of them stepped forward, the movement fluid and unnatural. The hood fell back slightly, revealing a face that seemed to warp and shift like smoke. I could feel their gaze piercing through the darkness, and an unbearable weight settled over me. Before I could make sense of it, a flash caught my attention. There, among the trees behind the figures, stood an enormous shrine made of intertwined branches. It was adorned with items similar to those I'd found in the box: flowers, feathers, and small bones. The realization hit me like a cold wave. This was the gathering point marked on the map. Suddenly, the childlike giggle rang out again, louder, more chaotic. The figures started to sway again, their voices intertwining with the laughter in a haunting melody. I felt a powerful connection to the clearing, a magnetic pull that tugged at my core. But fear surged back. I couldn't allow myself to be drawn in. I turned to flee, but before I could take a step, a chill ran down my spine. Someone else was behind me. That I spun around, heart racing, to find the hollow-eyed figure from before, standing just a few feet away. It grinned wider, the uncanny contortion of its face lighting up the dim clearing. I felt paralyzed by its gaze, a terrifying mix of recognition and dread. Without thinking, I darted away, racing into the shadows of the forest as the figures began to chant. Their sounds grew louder, drowning out everything else. I stumbled through the underbrush, branches tearing at my skin, urging me to go faster, to escape whatever was behind me. But as I fled, I realized I could still hear the laughter echoing even further into the woods, calling me back, pulling me deeper, as if whatever I had interrupted was just beginning. I kept running, churning my feet through the dense undergrowth. My mind raced with questions, but I couldn't afford to think about them now. I focused only on the path ahead, weaving around trees and leaping over roots, feeling the fear course through me like electricity. I didn't dare look back. After what felt like forever, I broke through a dense patch of foliage and stumbled into another clearing. This one was different. It was smaller, encircled by ancient trees that twisted and high-fived overhead. The ground was soft, covered in moss that swallowed my footsteps. Panic tightened my chest. I had to find somewhere to hide that I darted behind a massive oak, pressing my back against its rough bark. My heart pounded painfully in my ears, drowning out the chorus of laughter that continued to echo in the distance. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to think. I needed to get out of here. But as I opened my eyes, dread washed over me once more. A soft glow caught my attention from the center of the clearing. I peered around the tree, not sure if I should escape or investigate. In the middle of the clearing, floating in the air, was a shimmering orb. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, illuminating the dark corners of the woods. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic. But beauty felt like a dangerous trap now. I fought against the pull, reminding myself of the chanting figures and the hollow-eyed creature. Just when I thought I could turn away, a voice echoed in my mind. "Come closer. We are waiting for you." With a sudden rush of panic, I turned to bolt in the opposite direction. But the moment I did, I collided with a figure. Stumbling back, I looked up to see another hooded figure standing before me. I could barely make out the form in the dim light, but its presence was suffocating. "No!" I shouted, skirting to the side. I needed to find a way out. I could have sworn I saw the figure smirk beneath its hood, as if it relished my fear. I sprinted around it, adrenaline pounding through my veins, but my escape was quickly cut off. A second figure emerged from the shadows behind the trees, then a third. They advanced with a slow, deliberate pace, their voices rising in a haunting harmony that I felt the weight of despair settle in. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Just as I prepared to fight or flee, the shimmering orb blazed brighter. In an instant, everything went dark. That I stumbled forward, falling into an open space, and landed on uneven ground. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, looking around. I was no longer in the clearing but in a cave, the remnants of my surroundings barely visible in the faint glow of the orb above. I could hear the figures outside chanting, their sing-song voices merging into a singular pulse that reverberated through the walls. Then, a whisper brushed against my ear, cool and enticing. "You belong with us." I turned, desperate for an escape, but the way I had come was blocked. The cave felt alive, the walls shifting as if I were being drawn deeper into whatever trapped me here. I backed away from the sound, only to trip over something in the dark. I froze, my hands trembling as I explored what lay at my feet. It felt like fabric, rough and damp, a discarded piece of clothing, like the ones the figures wore, when I saw it, a small entrance hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks. With nowhere else to go, I knew I had to make it there. As I approached, the chanting grew louder, echoing ominously through the cave. I took a deep breath and pressed forward, but the laughter returned with a vengeance, sending a shiver through my spine that I squeezed through the opening, hoping it would lead me to freedom. But as I slipped into the narrow passage, I knew that whatever awaited me on the other side would pull me right back into the darkness. I pushed through the jagged rocks, feeling the sharp edges scrape against my skin. The narrow passage twisted and turned, and I had to move carefully to avoid getting stuck. The chanting grew fainter behind me, but the sense of urgency settled deeper in my chest. I had to escape. Finally, the passage opened up into another space, but this one felt different. The air was charged, thick with tension. I stepped out cautiously, squinting as my eyes adjusted to the dim light. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols I had never seen before. They glowed faintly, pulsating like the orb I had just left behind. Ahead, I saw shadows flitting around, and I instinctively ducked behind a large stone. My heart leaped into my throat as I strained to hear. The figures were back, their silhouettes darting about in a strange dance. They moved in a trance, chanting in a language that made my skin crawl. I needed to keep quiet. The last thing I wanted was to draw attention to myself. I held my breath, waiting for a moment to slip away unnoticed. But just as I thought I could make a run for it, one of the figures let out a high-pitched laugh that echoed through the cavern. I felt my blood run cold. Suddenly, they all turned in unison, their faces obscured by the hoods, but I could sense their gaze piercing through the darkness. I ducked lower, pressing my back against the stone and hoping they didn't notice me. In the confusion, I spotted something unusual aglow to my right. I shifted slightly, trying to keep out of sight while moving closer. What I saw was astonishing. An ancient altar, carved from the rock, sat in the center. It was covered in offerings, twisted pieces of metal, small bones, and what looked like a child's doll. Its eyes missing. Fear washed over me again, but so did curiosity. Why were these items here? What had happened to the people who had come before me? I was caught between the instinct to flee and the need to understand. As I reached out to examine the altar, something moved behind me. I twisted around, feeling that familiar chill run down my spine. A figure loomed in the shadows, its presence unmistakable. "You've come to offer yourself," it whispered, the breath chilling me to the bone. "No." I gasped, stumbling back, nearly falling over the altar. My heart raced as I tried to find a path to escape. The figures outside were closing in, their chanting rising in intensity. I knew that I couldn't stay here. In a rush of adrenaline, I made a break for it, dashing past the altar and heading towards a dark tunnel that appeared to be an exit. The echoing laughs and chants were now a cacophony behind me, growing louder as I surged forward. Just as I reached the tunnel, I heard a voice call out, "You cannot run from destiny." I halted for a brief second, battling the fear that threatened to paralyze me. Destiny? The thought sent a new wave of terror through me. I had to keep moving. I dove into the tunnel, the darkness swallowing me whole, and I could only hope that it led me to freedom. But as I pressed on, I wondered, what lay at the end of this dark path? The tunnel twisted and turned, each step echoing against the stone walls. I felt like I was running through a nightmare, the shadows behind me creeping ever closer. My breath quickened as I stumbled forward, reckless and desperate. I had to keep moving, the darkness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, but I pushed on. Suddenly, the passage opened into a wider chamber, and I skidded to a halt. My eyes darted around, searching for any signs of danger. The air was thick here, cold and damp. Just ahead, a fire flickered in the center of the room. It cast strange shadows that danced on the walls, merging with the remaining markings. Surrounding the fire were more of those figures, their hoods still hiding their faces. In the glow of the flames, I could see that they were gathered around something on the ground, an object that gleamed ominously. Curiosity mingled with fear. I took a cautious step forward, squinting to get a better look. That's when I saw it, a mirror, cracked and tarnished, reflecting the fire's light like a beacon. The figures moved rhythmically, their chants now a low hum, and as one, they raised their hands toward the mirror. I felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to approach. But my instinct screamed to stay away. Just as I turned to retreat, the leading figure, taller than the others, turned toward me. I froze, locked in place as their hood slipped back slightly. A face, ancient and twisted, stared back, eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Join us," it beckoned, the voice layered with an eerie echo that made my skin crawl. The other figures turned to face me, their movements synchronizing as if I were now part of their ritual. Fear gripped me. I backed away slowly, not daring to turn my back. The mirror vibrated suddenly, the reflection distorting and shifting. I could see images in it, flashes of faces, places, and events I'd never known. I felt like I was being sucked into it. Then the figures stepped forward, their chanting intensifying. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my feet. Panic swept over me, urging my heart to race even faster. I had to get out. I couldn't let them drag me into whatever this was. Just as I was about to bolt back through the tunnel, the fire erupted with a surge of heat, illuminating the chamber. A new presence filled the space, a ghostly figure rising from the flames, its features indistinct but undeniably human. "Leave," it whispered, the sound like wind rustling through autumn leaves. "You are not meant to be here." I felt the weight of those words settle over me. It was a warning, clear and resonant. I turned and sprinted back through the tunnel, clutching my sides as my lungs burned. The echo of the figure's chants faded behind me, swallowed by the darkness. As I emerged into the cool night air, I stumbled out of the cave and collapsed onto the ground, gasping. The stars were bright above me, a stark contrast to the horrors I'd just run from. But there was no time to rest. I realized I wasn't safe. Not yet. A low, haunting laugh drifted from the cave's entrance, sending icy fingers of dread crawling up my spine. They knew I was out here, and they would come for me. I scrambled to my feet, racing into the thick trees beyond the cave, adrenaline fueling my every step. I had escaped the cave, but I could still feel the weight of their eyes on me. Where was I supposed to go now? And would I ever truly be free from what I had encountered? The forest felt alive around me, branches snapping underfoot as I hurried deeper into the trees. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, creating shifting shapes that danced in my peripheral vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching me. I stumbled over a root and nearly fell. Catching myself, I cursed under my breath. I had to stay focused. My heart was pounding in my ears, drowning out the nighttime sounds of crickets and rustling leaves. As I moved away from the cave, I began to notice a strange mist rising between the trees. It coiled around the trunks, almost like it was alive, and I could make out the faintest whispers curling through the air. My stomach knotted. That same haunting voice was back, echoing my fear, reminding me of the figures in the cave. Suddenly, a chill shot through me. I turned quickly, convinced someone or something was just behind me. All I saw was the darkness, heavy and suffocating. I pressed on, searching for a way to get out of this nightmare. I spotted a clearing ahead, illuminated by the pale light of the moon. It seemed like a safe place to catch my breath. As I stepped into the open, I froze. There were 3 tents set up in the clearing, oddly out of place in the solitude of the woods. They looked old and weathered but were intact. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No response. The air felt thick with tension, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Why were there tents here? I approached cautiously. The first tent's flap was slightly open, swaying gently in the wind. I peered inside but found only scattered gear, an old lantern, a sleeping bag, and a battered map. My eyes were drawn to something unusual on the map. There were strange symbols marked in several locations, symbols that somewhat resembled the ones I had seen in the cave. Just then, a noise made me jump. From my left, a figure emerged from the shadows. I couldn't tell if it was a person or an illusion. It was a man, disheveled and wild-eyed, dressed in ragged clothing. He staggered toward me, breathing heavily, as if he had just run a marathon. "Get away from here!" he shouted, his voice frantic. "They're coming for you. They'll take you." Before I could ask him what he meant, he turned and bolted back into the trees. I was left standing there, overwhelmed. I glanced back at the tents, feeling an unsettling pull to investigate further, but my instinct screamed for me to run. That's when I heard a distant chanting rising up through the forest, echoing the last remnants of my experience in the cave. It was them. They were closer than before. Panic surged through me, and I turned, sprinting back towards the trees I'd come through, but every direction felt wrong. The whispers in the mist grew louder, wrapping around me, trying to draw me in. I felt a heaviness in the air. The ground was uneven, roots grabbing at my ankles. I needed to escape before I ended up like that man, lost and part of whatever dark force haunted these woods. Then a flash caught my eye. Just ahead, a shimmer flickered in the gloom, almost like the reflection of the mirror in the cave. I squinted through the fog, my heart racing. What was it? I hesitated, fear battling my curiosity. Whatever it was could either help me or be another trap. "Is someone there?" I called out, though my voice was barely a whisper. I had to know what was drawing me in, one way or another. The shimmer grew brighter, lighting up the area around it. My heart pounded as I stepped closer. The mist seemed to part for me, revealing a small, circular pool of water. It glimmered like glass, reflecting the moonlight in a way that felt almost otherworldly. I could see my own wide-eyed reflection staring back at me as I knelt down, the cool night air brushing against my skin. Should I touch it? The stories about mysterious waters flooded my mind, wishing wells, portals, illusions. The questions made me hesitate. What if it pulled me in? What if it showed me something I didn't want to see? Suddenly, a loud crack of a branch echoed from the trees behind me. I whipped around, heart racing. The chanting grew louder, echoing through the clearing. It was coming from everywhere at once, sending chills down my spine. I had to make a decision that I turned back to the pool. Without thinking further, I dipped my fingers into the water. It was freezing, shocking me with a jolt of clarity. The moment my skin made contact, images flooded my mind, visions of the cave, the symbols, and the man's terrified face. But another image surfaced, one that froze my blood. A group of shadowy figures, their faces hidden, gathered around the pool, chanting in unison. They were poised as if waiting for something or someone. As I pulled my hand back, a cold wind swept through the clearing, stirring the mist around me. The water rippled violently now, distorting my reflection into ghostly shapes. Panic rose again, and I stumbled back, my legs trembling. "Who are you?" I shouted into the dark, though I knew no one would respond. The figures loomed large in my mind, a threat I could almost feel. My instincts screamed for me to run, but something held me there, a mix of fear and curiosity. I needed to know more, but my gut told me it could cost me. Then I heard footsteps crunching through the leaves nearby. Someone or something was approaching. My breath quickened. I darted toward the nearest tree, pressing my back against the rough bark. I peered around the trunk, heart racing. Two figures emerged from the mist, their outlines blurred and distorted. They moved with an unnatural grace, stepping silently as they glided toward the pool. It was them. I had no doubt now. They were just like the faces I had seen in the cave. "Join us," one of them whispered, a voice like silk laced with malice. "You belong with us." The words resonated through my bones. It felt like a challenge, each syllable laced with power. I fought the urge to step forward, to answer the call. A dark pull tugged at the edges of my mind, weaving through my thoughts like a web that I forced myself to peek around the trunk for a better look. They were reaching for the water, their fingers inches away from the surface. I couldn't let this happen. I had to get away before it was too late. As I backed away, branches snapped loudly beneath my feet. The figures turned towards me, and their eyes glowed brightly in the darkness. I didn't wait to see how they would react. I bolted, sprinting back towards the tents, my mind racing. I needed to find something, anything that could help. The map. The strange symbols might be the key to defending myself or understanding whatever evil lurked in these woods. I burst into the clearing, heart pounding. But the sight that met me stopped me in my tracks. The tents were gone. The clearing was empty, swallowed by the forest as if it had never existed. I was left alone again, surrounded by the dark, whispering trees, with the chanting drawing closer. Now, I had no choice. I had to keep going deeper into the woods, into the heart of whatever nightmare awaited. The forest swallowed me whole, the whispers intensifying as I ran. I knew I had to put as much distance between myself and those figures as possible. Each leaf crunching beneath my feet felt like a drumbeat echoing my panicked heart. Fear propelled me forward, yet a part of me was still consumed by the inexplicable allure of those shadows and the laughter that haunted me. Then I broke through another thicket and stumbled into a small clearing. I skidded to a halt, breathless, glancing around for any sign of life. There was nothing. Just black earth and trees looming over me like silent sentinels. I spotted a shallow depression in the ground, filled with a shimmering liquid that glinted with a strange light, reminiscent of the pool from before. Was it safe? I approached cautiously, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I kneeled and touched the surface. It was cold, almost icy, but unlike the pool, it took my breath away. That same sense of clarity rushed through me, images flooding my mind once again. There were the figures, yes, but now I saw flashes of faces: hikers, campers, others who had come here and vanished. Their souls tugged at the edges of my memory like tendrils of fog, drifting just out of reach that it was an offering a way to join them. The realization made me recoil: they weren't just lost. They were part of this place, forever entwined with Cedarwood Forest. Just as I considered my next move, I heard a low, familiar giggle echo from the trees. The shadows thickened, coiling around me as the air grew frigid. "Come play." A child's voice called sweetly from the edge of the clearing. My stomach dropped. I had no time to think, I turned and ran. I burst into the underbrush, branches snatching at my clothes, but I pushed forward. The laughter didn't dissipate, it chased me. Loud, frantic, more excited than ever. Panic gripped me tighter than any hand could. I ran until my legs burned, breath escaping in ragged gasps. But I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. I pushed through until I reached the edge of a steep ravine. Below, a thick fog swirled, obscuring any view of the other side. This is it, I thought. As I caught my breath, I noticed the ravine wasn't empty. There were stones lining the base, similar to the path I had followed in the beginning. The echoes of laughter turned into whispers, calling me downwards, begging me to come closer to the clutches of whatever waited for me below. Determined to avoid the dark intrigue of the forest at my back, I squinted at the stones. They glimmered faintly, as if beckoning me. There, carved into one of them, was a familiar symbol, the same one I had seen in the cabin and the cave. An impulse surged within me, compelling me to understand. Perhaps the key to breaking free from the forest's grip lay here. Against better judgment, I leaned over the edge of the ravine to get a better look. That's when I saw them, the figures, hundreds of them, emerging from the fog below. Their laughter echoed again, but it was different now, like a call to a gathering, an invitation to join them. With urgency, I backed away, scrambling to escape from the edge. Just in time, too. As I turned, I nearly collided with the tall figure clad in shadow that loomed directly in my path. Those glowing eyes stared at me, unblinking. It reached out slowly, fingers brushing against my arm, and an electric shock coursed through me. "I've been waiting for you," it said, voice dark and airy. I stumbled back, searching desperately for a way out. The chanting returned, sonorous and rhythmic, sending shivers down my spine as the others began to emerge from the tree line. I could feel myself slipping, struggling to battle the urge that was pulling me into their world. I turned to the ravine again. It was my only choice. As the figures surrounded me, I leaped, launching myself into the fog. Falling felt surreal. For a moment, time paused as I spiraled down, consumed by darkness. I hit the ground hard. Pain radiated through me as I scrambled to my feet, drenched in fog and confusion. I couldn't tell how far I had fallen. Staggering forward, I looked around. I was still in the forest, yet everything felt unreal. Shadows danced even more wildly, sweeping through the mist like alive tendrils. The laughter echoed, but now it was laced with something darker. The pulsating glow of the stones shimmered ahead. They were arranged in a circle, forming a gateway or perhaps a trap. I hesitated, knowing I couldn't hide forever. The laughter grew louder, blending with whispers, and I was flooded with the overwhelming realization that it was all connected. The laughter, the figures, even the stones, all were part of this forest's relentless hunger. Was there truly a way out? Or were they right about destiny? Ahead, deep within the hollow silence of the trees, jewels of truth sparkled in the dark, fragments that whispered, "Join us, we're waiting." With heart racing, I leaned toward the stones, daring to connect, desperate to know that I still think about that night sometimes. Even now, the laughter lingers, echoing in the darkest corners of my subconscious. The need to return to Cedarwood is never far away, and I'm left wondering if I am still drawn into that world. It changed how I see things. But will I ever know for sure?